Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, Brian Piper, University of Rochester. Love to hear about Content Strategy Day. If you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll do some Q&A at the end. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Rich. Thanks to everyone who's joining today. One of the few positive things that's come out of COVID is that a lot of these previously local-only communities have opened up to non-local virtual participants. So I've been able to join several of these types of groups, and it's really helped increase my knowledge base because of the variety of content and people that are available. So I want to, say how much I've really enjoyed the presentations in the group so far. After watching Dennis's presentation last week, I decided I need to get to work on mine, but I actually spent all week stuck in the Best of Next Door Twitter site that someone on here recommended. Anyway, just kidding. A little about myself. I'm the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. Like Dennis, I started my digital career as a developer. I worked at a small company doing websites and e-learning. And I didn't really have much passion around full-time coding, and work just was kind of a way for me to pay for my hobbies. And since I wasn't one of the better programmers, I ended up doing most of the web positioning and performance tracking work that we offered to all of our clients as a free add-on to their website development. And of course, web positioning turned into SEO and performance tracking turned into data and analytics. But I didn't really realize the importance of those skills at the time, but I enjoyed the work. I did a stint at an ad agency for a few years, leading their web team. Really enjoyed the strategy and planning at that job, but then there was a lot of coding that I wasn't really thrilled to be doing. So I did some e-learning development for a defense contracting company. And then in 2014, I read Epic Content Marketing, and it changed my professional life. I was able to pivot into digital marketing at the company I was working at, made some big gains for them in SEO and content optimization, which landed me my current job at the university. 2 weeks after I started, I went to Content Marketing World and loved it. This is my first obligatory selfie with Joe Polizzi, who I find every year at the conference, and thank him for writing Epic Content Marketing and changing my career. So that first year I watched just incredible speakers up on stage and so many people that I connected with talking about content marketing, and just knew that I was in the right place. So I spent the last 4 years optimizing our content at the university. I've doubled our organic traffic every year. I've launched SEO initiatives and keyword research training across the institution. And I run content strategy workshops as well, and started presenting at industry events and doing some consulting. In 2019, I presented at Content Marketing World virtually, and then last year in person. And it was just great to be hanging out with all the speakers and presenters who I had learned so much from over the years. And that's actually where I met Dennis. Here we all are out drinking. And so I spent some time with Joe Polizzi at the event, and somehow managed to talk him into letting me co-author the second edition of Epic Content Marketing with him. So that'll be coming out at the end of the year, and that's one of my big projects for the year. So then I decided that this is the year for me to build my own brand, do as much presenting as I can, and start building my community. Thanks to Joe, I've also been diving into Web3, NFTs, and the creator economy. I'm giving some presentations at local ad agencies to educate them about some opportunities. I think there's just some amazing stuff going on in that space. But today I'm going to talk about using data to optimize your content strategy. This will bleed over a little bit into UI, UX, and other performance considerations. The conventions I'm going to talk about can be used at any scale. So whether you're a small business or whether you're a large institution like us with lots of different siloed units who aren't necessarily gathering, analyzing, and reporting their data in one consistent way. So I'm going to talk about some ways you can look at your data across your landscape. So including website data, social channels, video, podcasts, email. So hopefully there'll be something in here for everybody. First things first, none of this works if you don't have a strategy and have it documented, and if you don't have clearly defined goals. So looking at your data and creating reports and dashboards without knowing your strategic goals is just like driving in your car without a destination. It's great to tool around on a beautiful day, but we don't do that very often because we usually have somewhere we want to go. So your goals will determine your key performance indicators or KPIs and let you know what you need to be measuring. Now, your KPIs are your mile markers and road signs that let you know whether or not your content's taking you in the right direction and how quickly you're getting there. You got to start off by establishing baselines so you know where you are. And then you can look at your historic data to see how far you've been progressing, with your previous tactics. And then finally, you need to understand your audiences and know all of your channels. So there's lots of different ways you can travel to your destination, a lot of people you can talk to along the way, but you need to know which people are on which roads and what questions those people are asking so you can convince them to get into your car and come with you. So if you haven't identified your goals, your KPIs, and your audiences, you won't know if the data is important or relevant for changing your content strategy. So we'll start off talking about website data. We use data to inform a lot of decisions that we make, from what we watch to what we eat and what we buy. Data makes our lives much easier. So I never understand it when people don't look at their data before they make decisions about their website, which is really your largest window to the world. So if you're not doing regular audits to look at key performance areas of your site, you're missing out on opportunities to increase your performance, to improve user experience, and to drive more traffic to meet your strategic goals. So we spend a lot of time focused on adding content to our site or tracking how many people are making purchases without really looking at the underlying issues that might be affecting those numbers. So the audits I'm going to talk about today are particularly important if you're doing any sort of website redesign or restructuring. So if you start a large redesign without doing these audits, you could end up with a site that looks a lot better, but doesn't perform better. So the content may be prettier and in a more modern framework, but not necessarily easier for users to find and consume. I did an SEO workshop a few years ago, and a couple months after the workshop, I got a call from one of the attendees. They said they're doing a complete website redesign and were wondering if I could help with some SEO. I said, sure. When does the new site launch? They said next week. So I ran a bunch of audits on the existing site, got a bunch of data about search positions and high performing pages. And then the next week when the new site was up, I reran those audits, looked at the data, and called them to let them know that they're probably going to lose 30,000 visitors a month because of the pages that they removed. And they said those pages were old content that hadn't been updated for years. And I told them that those pages were answering particular questions that users were asking, and that traffic provided them an opportunity to, to really figure out the calls to action and, how they could leverage that audience that was coming in and consuming that content and steer them into converting, and helping them with their goal conversions. So the website audits I'm going to talk about include 4 core audits and then 1 encompassing audit. And so the data all has to be examined with your user specifically in mind, which is why they're in the bullseye of this diagram. So I call this the web optimization model. And these audits will set you up for success in a redesign, and then they're great for just monitoring performance issues on your site on a regular basis. So the first audit that I always run is the analytics audit. And that'll tell you if you have the right accounts set up for the site, if they're set up properly, and then what pages are getting the most traffic. Lots of ways to set up analytics. There's different analytics packages you can get out there. But what I usually recommend for everyone is you start off with Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and Google Search Console. So there's a variety of settings and views and conventions that you can build up in all of those. One of the things we learned from Kyle's presentation last year is that Google Analytics 4 is out. So if you don't have your Google Analytics 4 properties set up, you need to do that. The views that I usually recommend that people create are a raw view with all of your unfiltered data that you never touch, so that you always have that as a backup. Then there's a test view where you set up any filters or custom code before adding those into your standard views. And then the view where you filter out all the bots and spiders and you add those custom filters in. So this is your main data source that you'll use for reporting. In higher ed and large companies, I usually recommend that they segment out internal and external traffic so you can see what your employees are looking at versus what external audiences are looking at. I always recommend enabling the benchmarking report within Google Analytics, because that'll show you how your site is performing against other sites in your industry. And if you have a search function on your site, you want to turn on site search. That'll allow you to track what users are searching for once they come into your site. So this is helpful for content and user interface decisions. So, and then, like I said, make sure you set up your Google Analytics 4 property, because like all properties in Google Analytics, until you set it up, it doesn't start reporting your data. So then when you're running the analytics audit, once you know how your data is set up and you know that it's set up accurately, you want to gather some key pieces of information. I always like to look at data over a period of time. A year usually works good when I'm running this audit. You want to know what the most tracked pages are on your site, or most trafficked pages are on your site, and which pages have the highest organic traffic or traffic from search engines. So the size of the site that you're auditing will determine the number of pages you need to get that data on. So on your personal site, it may only be like 5 or 10 pages. On a large company site, you may want to take the first 50 or 100 pages to really look at. And the next audit is the performance audit. So in May of 2020, Google announced that it would be making Core Web Vitals a ranking factor for sites in their search results. So improving these elements help create a better user experience, which is what we all want. So Google's kind of done us a favor in forcing us to optimize our site performance, make things load faster, especially on mobile, which is the area where most websites tend to suffer. Google's provided us some resources to help optimize these areas. Page Speed Insights is a great place. You can just enter your URL in. It'll tell you how your page scores and which areas you may want to flag for your developers to look at. Another great tool is Pingdom. It'll allow you to look at load times based on users visiting your site from different geographic areas. And then the next audit is the information architecture audit. This will give you a high-level overview of the structure of your site. So you can see where you have clusters of content, where you might be making navigation difficult for your users, anywhere where you've got a lot of content around a particular topic. There's lots of different ways to do this audit based on the size of your site. If you have a small site, you can do it. There's some free tools out there. You can even just do it with Post-its. Once you start getting into larger sites with over 100 pages or so, you'll probably want to start looking at some different automated options. Some of these tools can provide all sorts of excellent visualizations that'll really help expose things in your site that you might not be aware of, like pages that your CMS is automatically generating based on tags or categories. Another thing you want to look at during the information architecture audit is the current user journey through your site. So you can get some of this information from Google Analytics. There's other tools that'll generate heat maps to capture your user cursor behaviors, or even generate screen recordings of users navigating through your site. And then the next audit, probably my favorite audit, is the search audit. So this will let you know all the pages you have that are currently ranking within the top 100 positions for particular keywords on Google. So this is critical for driving content strategy and identifying content to optimize. So once you know this, you can start doing keyword research, figure out what existing content is like low-hanging fruit, and what new content you should create. I go through the list and identify high volume keywords, phrases, and questions that are strategically important to the business. You also want to look, you want to run a gap analysis against your competitors to see what terms they're ranking for that you're not ranking for. The encompassing audit is the strategic audit. That's the last one that you should run. That'll tell you which improvements are the most important to meet your business objectives. And it'll provide the framework for all the decisions that you're going to make using your data. The strategic audit is when you sit down with the key stakeholders to determine, what the business goals are, how the website's going to help deliver on those goals. And then this is also when you get them on board with the data and analytics methodology to make sure that down the road, when you make recommendations, they don't say, oh, no, we can't do that. You can say, well, remember we talked about, these steps we're taking and the data we're looking at. So there's lots of different ways to ensure that you stay focused on your users during this process, whether that is, creating personas or just having, solid understandings from a demographic and functional needs perspective of who your audiences are. And then you really want to make sure that your highest trafficked pages are easy to find. You want to build your navigation so it directs users to that information. And then you want to optimize your most strategic pages and the ones driving the most organic traffic, and make sure that you have, calls to action and trackable and measurable KPIs or goals for each one of those pages. And then from a content strategy perspective, these audits will inform decisions around what existing content should be optimized and what new content you should create. Your content strategy includes more than just your website. So let's talk about some other channels and the data you can get from them. So let's start with social. So most social channels have some sort of built-in metrics where you can find some good insights, but you're limited to what you can do within their tool. So Twitter only allows you to compare data within, I think it's a 90-day period, and Facebook limits you to 180 days. So what you want to do is you want to export your data from these tools and then track the items that are most important to you separately so that you can view and report on them over time. And so just like with your website data, there's several paid solutions you can use to do this, but you can also, pretty easily just do it in Excel, just put in the data that you really want to track. And then you can put that into, a Google Data Studio dashboard. And then when you can line up all of your channels together, then you can start looking for, areas to investigate or insights that you can discover based on, overall social performance. One of the things our social team adds in when they're recording data are tags for each post with key strategies, so that we can always go back and look at our data to determine, which strategic posts had the most engagement rates, on which channels. So we can determine which strategies are performing best to which audiences, which users are engaging with that particular content. So, we know that we post research data on Twitter and we post community stories on Facebook, and that's where we really kind of leverage that data to optimize our social campaigns. Email, of course, can be an amazing tool to communicate directly with your audience and collect very specific data. You can see from some of these numbers that there is a lot of email sent. They say the average person gets 120 business emails every day. So, it's critical that you look at your data to figure out what's working and what's not, and how you can, more effectively engage with your users. If you put out a newsletter, make sure you use UTM codes on all the links that go to your website so you can track the activity of each user when they click on those links. If you're using an email management tool, you can get specific data on open rates and click-through rates, but those metrics won't always connect through to your Google Analytics goals, or you won't be able to look at those in conjunction with social media performance. So a lot of times you're going to miss insights because you're not looking at your entire landscape of data. And it's pretty easy to just enter that data into a spreadsheet, connect those data sets, and then you can display that in Data Studio to see different ways to associate those insights. One of the most effective forms of communication can be email marketing. But, as a smart person once said, I know that B2B email marketing is broken because I'm the recipient of a lot of B2B email marketing. Dennis said that last week. It's the same in B2C. So really focus on looking for insights in your data to give your audience more of what they like, what they're reading. So a few metrics to be aware of when comparing the effectiveness of email to social. People spend way more time in their email than they do on a particular social channel, right? 5 hours versus 35 minutes a day. You're much more likely to reach and engage with your users by email than in social, just from the reach and open rates and the click-through rates. And then, as Joe Polizzi would say, you're building on owned land with your email, whereas you're building on rented land with social. And you never know when your account may be shut down or restricted. So there's also lots of data points you can get from podcasts and videos. Some of the common ones we track are number of views and downloads, time spent listening. But then some of the other pieces of data that you might want to look at are keywords that users are searching on to find your content. And once you start looking at that data, you can work on, optimizing the descriptions of your videos, the titles and the tags that are being used on those pieces of content. And these platforms, your podcast and your video platforms, have the same limitations as far as using that data and tracking over time. So you want to export that data so you can sort and compare different metrics in different ways. Like podcast metrics won't reveal how many mentions your podcast is getting on different social channels, or if you're being asked to appear on other podcasts after particular episodes, or how much traffic your podcast is driving to your website. So, there's ways to track all of those things that exist outside of the tools. So data can provide some incredible information and insights about your performance of your content, how it's being consumed, how it's being discovered, and what you're missing that your audience is looking for. And so, some of the most impactful insights can come from visualizations and just looking at your data in different ways. So putting your data in a visual format can let you see gaps and strengths in your content. There's a lot of data visualization tools out there. They're getting easier and easier to use all the time. We create lots of dashboards and visualizations in Google Data Studio and Tableau. This is a dashboard that we created to showcase our performance with earned media over time. So it's the number of mentions in different strategically important publications. We created a media quality score that we go through every month, and we track the impact or importance of a particular piece of content to our brand. We give that a number so then we can see over time, which publications tend to favor us better, which ones we're going to reach out to more often with, which different strategic stories, so that because we know which ones are more likely to get picked up by the different publications. So tons of different data points to track for each piece of content that you put out. Before you start collecting data or invest in a data solution software, make sure you understand the reason that you're collecting and reporting that data. So you're only spending your time with data that can deliver insights. Understand what your needs are before you invest in tools that may not give you the data you want. It's always good when you're going to do a trial version of a piece of software to know what data you want to be able to collect, to know which metrics are going to be the most impactful to your strategy. So hopefully I've given you some ideas on different ways you can look at your data to inform decisions about your content strategy. And I'm glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I do want to see if there's any questions in the chat, or you can use the reactions button on Zoom to do a hand raise. And while you do that, I've got a canned question to throw at you. I liked at the beginning of your presentation, you used the phrase data informed. And it might be rhetoric, but I tend to agree with being data informed, not so much data driven. Data driven to me feels like, well, the numbers say this, therefore I have to do it. It throws out, frankly, a lot of heuristic experience. So on that note, being data informed, right, to make those decisions, how might you better discern what is truly a useful metric that matters? You just said data that can deliver insights versus, say, a vanity metric or some, the latest shiny object metric. Tell me a little bit about your discerning those two, so we only focus on metrics that matter.
Absolutely, it's a great question. And so much of that is based on your understanding of your strategic goals and your users. So, a lot of times I'll do consulting for institutions to, help them optimize their content strategy. And when I'm done with all the audits, I present them with recommendations. And I say, these are based on my understanding of your institution, your goals, your needs, but you're the subject matter experts when it comes to your company. So you know best which one of these, are really going to help you get towards your strategic goals the most, because you have to prioritize. I can give you a list of 30 things you need to change with your content and your analytics, but you may only really need 5 of those to really be able to hit those goals that you want to achieve.
Good, thank you. I see, Rosemary, you have your hand up.
Yes, sure. Brian, so I have found, looking at multiple sites, that companies are not meeting Google's core metrics. Their sites are not as fast as Google wants them to be. And I'm talking big sites. Like we got hit early last year with some kind of an update. And we really worked on figuring out what it was. And we did a research on site speed across all kinds of different sites, because that's what we thought. And practically none of the big sites we chose met those core vitals or page speed of 3 seconds or less. So what do you tell customers about that, or people that you're teaching?
Yeah, that's very true. And I know Amazon is one of the biggest offenders. They actually have some, very poorly performing pages. So Google just announced the Core Web Vitals 2020, and their changes to the algorithm are kind of at their own pace, and they're going to affect smaller sites with less content more than they'll affect a huge site with lots of content. I mean, Google or Amazon has a ton of traffic, which is one of the key ranking factors. So all that is kind of taken into consideration as far as how much it's going to impact your site. But what I always tell companies is, even if you're not looking to get a 100 on your Core Web Vitals score, anything you can do to improve that user experience is a benefit to you. Obviously, you've got to weigh that. You don't want to have, your developers spending 3 weeks trying to optimize something in your theme if it's just going to, bump your score up a little bit. But if there's low-hanging fruit, if you have images that aren't optimized, or you're serving up, full screen video that's not compressed as much as it can be, then there's definitely areas to improve.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll follow up on Rosemary's question. You just mentioned that, getting 100 on your Core Web Vitals score. I chatted a link to a Google web dev page on Vitals. There's other information there. In terms of getting that score, is there a tool whereby I could plug in a URL and it'll give me back that score? And if so, could somebody please chat that?
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Linda, I see you raise your hand. I think you're on mute though. Should be lower left, or type it in. Okay, you're in the vehicle. At least you're not driving, which is good. You're not in motion.
I don't know. It looks like she might be driving.
Okay.
Just kidding. I don't think she is.
Oh, she doesn't have a question. She just wanted to say hi. Okay. Yeah, the wonders of Zoom. Tom, any observations, questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I want to say, Brian, congrats on your journey. So how did you wrangle Joe to co-write the book with him?
Well, I think after, every year of telling him what an impact Epic Content Marketing had on me, it was actually in one of the Content Marketing Institute book reviews. They were reviewing Content Inc. It was myself and I think one other person in the book review, and Joe was in there answering questions about the book. And I just asked him in the chat, hey, when are you going to update the, do the next version of Epic Content Marketing? And he said, if you want to co-author that with me, let's do it. I laughed. And then the next day I sent him an email. I was like, if you're serious, I definitely want to take that opportunity. So yeah, it just worked out and we submitted it to the publisher and they accepted it. So now I've got a lot of writing to do.
That's very cool.
Great. The last thing as an author you want to hear is when's it coming out? But I'm sorry, when's the book coming out?
At the end of the year. We've got to have everything to the publisher on July 1st. And then they said it'll usually take 3 or 4 months after that. So
good. Oh, good. Any other questions folks have for Brian while we're on the call?
and if anybody else has any stories of where you have found insights in your data or things that have changed your business processes from data, I always love hearing those stories as well. And I know Tom, you guys at Treasure Data are doing a ton of really innovative AI, machine learning, personalization things with data. So
Well, I'll just throw out one of my favorite tools to use for clients with respect to getting organic search traffic and monitoring what's happening is a tool called Big Metrics. I think it's bigmetrics.io. It's only about $25 a month. But the cool thing about it is it gives you a really easy way to see what your low performing and non-performing pages are. And when you show that to clients, it's just like, okay, now they understand it and they don't know why these pages don't rank. But of course, there's lots of reasons, no links and poor quality and so on. But really, you're right, the data, you just have to show it to them, right? You just can't tell them, they have to see it.
Rosemary, is that a plugin for Google Analytics? Is it like an add-on?
No, what it does is it takes Google Search Console and it puts it in a different format. You should try it out. It's just to see the query reports, the striking distance keywords, the pages that aren't performing. It's just really easy to look at that data.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rosemary. I chatted it in the Zoom chat there. I think I got it right. Big.
Yeah, I think you did too.
Good. Well, selfishly, I appreciate all the discussion around data and metrics because I think I'm up a week from now to talk a little more about that and some of the work we're doing at Autodesk around rationalizing content performance measurement, especially stripping out vanity metrics and needlessly complex metrics. I'm rereading Avinash Web Analytics 2.0, which is it's kind of the Bible. It's 6 years old, but it's still foundationally relevant. And if you don't subscribe to Marketing Analytics Intersect, his newsletter, I should probably chat that in the link as well. I imagine Brian, you and Rosemary, Tom, you guys read some Avinash.
Yeah, absolutely. For 100 years, yeah. Right.
Scary smart.
Yeah.
Right.
Also a big fan of Chris Penn. I love his content. He always has interesting ways to look at data from a data scientist perspective. So
Right. And these are both guys who scary smart and then also really accessible, funny, snarky writing. Like it's fun to read.
I remember going to my very first talk at Google when he was the presenter and I walked into the room and I thought, oh, I'm going to be toast. I'm not going to understand anything this guy has to say. He was so down to earth and engaging. It was like, oh, I love this guy.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get down to, I think it's in Sunnyvale. His wife a couple of years ago opened a restaurant So if you follow Avinash on Twitter, sometimes he's tweeting about his wife's restaurant. I had to get in there and maybe meet the guy and have some delicious food. But this is great background for next week. I'm probably going to change some of my slides. Any other questions or comments or anecdotes to share with the group?
So Brian, I'd have a question for you. So we're launching a new site. So cdp.com is our new site. And I'd love to get your take on any things to fast track rankings or any clever tricks that you've worked on in your sites.
Fast tracking rankings, that's difficult in SEO to make really quick jumps. There's, just actually talking with Joe about, Web3 and NFTs and looking at the metrics around the engagement and amount of content that's come out on those topics. That seems like an easy way to drive. It depends on what the content of the site is. But I know we have a magazine, Futurity, that runs as part of the university. And we put out a NFT story a couple weeks ago, and it just spiked user traffic up. It increased our rankings on several terms that we were trying to target. And now we have a whole bunch of new terms around Web3 and NFTs and crypto that we're trying to look for stories on to syndicate from other universities and institutions. So there's also some interesting, it's more really with podcasts and video, where you can put up your podcast or your video as unlisted and then drive people to it with ads. And then when you list it, it looks like you've already got traffic and comments. And so the first day that your video launches, you've already got 5 people who have commented on it and 10 likes, and people are like, oh, this must really be something. People are flocking to this, even though it's been 2 weeks of paid ads that have gotten people into this. So little tricks, little tricks like that, but good content, good content's the key.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, Tom, I just chatted your cdp.com. You said you were launching it. It looks live to me. You want to tell us?
Oh, yeah. No, it's launched. It's soft launch.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So cdp.com is a category. So customer data platforms. So we were able to acquire the CDP domain from an existing company and switching it over to industry information site. So I'm just launching that and have launched it for about a month, and we're just building up content and rankings, and just looking for any other tips and tricks. So
Did sort of beginning a journey, thought leadership kind of awareness content for.
Yes. So,
and when you acquired it, that acronym CDP, it was used in some other industry or something, or?
Yeah, there's a link at the bottom. We have to keep it there for a little while to a company called Columbia Data Products. Happen to kind of have that domain, and so we acquired it from them and are launching the site.
Nice. It looks like you're using WordPress.
Yep.
With Yoast.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, just doing a quick SEM rush. Looks like you're already ranking this month. You've already jumped up in rankings for a bunch of different keywords. So yeah, keep optimizing those. A lot of different traffic opportunities there. Looks good.
And I just ran a screaming frog, and it looks like you got great titles.
Oh, thank you.
But Tom, we need to see a post on Wordle. I think if you really want to do some newsjacking, Wordle is the thing, right?
I know, that's true. I saw that.
Anybody else playing Wordle? Is it just like?
I just tried it. It's pretty cool.
I'm just glad they only let me do it once a day.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, there's my Wordle for the day. Back to work. Right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just looking at all your slides, Brian, like one of the things that I'm really changing over in this last year is I'm removing all kinds of stuff from the data that I'm sharing, because I think it's just been overwhelming for customers and they just don't know where to start.
Yeah, we give dashboards to our internal teams, but whenever we report up, we always do it in a PDF, in a document, where we can say, here's the insights from the data that we're going to show you. Here's the data points, and here's what the benchmark is, and here's what this tells you, and give them like 5 or 6 pieces of data, because any more than that, and they're just going to gloss over.
Yeah.
Right. Too much and you start to rat hole, right? And suddenly you're wrapped around the axle of like stuff that it's too complex, it's irrelevant, it's not timely, it's not useful. If that can't draw insights that lead to action, why is that a thing?
Right? Why spend your time on it?
Well, it's usually internal politics, or because somebody thinks this is the number, but is it? So
we've always done it this way. That's what we hear at the university all the time. We've always reported on it this way.
Well, Brian, while we've recorded this, and we've got a little bit of time left, but I might wrap up. While we've recorded this for replay, were you going to make the slides available? We could link to them or something, or?
You bet.
Cool.
I can pick those up for you, send you the link.
Good deal. Anybody else? I really appreciate all the dialogue. Any questions or comments for Brian? Not, I might wrap a little earlier.
I'll just say,
yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shake Salikian. I'm in the nonprofit world.
Shake.
I'm a nonprofit executive and mostly trying to learn as I help the nonprofits that I work with. Thank you so much for making this topic so easy to digest, and I've appreciated your presentation. I think in especially the nonprofit or higher education, that was the field I was in, their data-driven decision-making has been a thing for a while, but then we tend to get mired in the data and then get stuck there, right? So I love the data-informed decision-making. If you are talking to nonprofits that are just starting out, do you have any books that aren't too technical, for these teams? Because many nonprofits have lots of different hats that people are wearing that might inform them on how to do this work, what to pay attention to, but not to the level of, I haven't spent 20 years in this field.
Well, I'm biased towards Epic Content Marketing. There's going to be a new edition coming out at the end of the year, but Joe's other book, Content Inc., I think does a great job, and it's really focused more towards content entrepreneurs, but it works really great for businesses, especially, small businesses, nonprofit businesses as well. And it's really all about how to build an audience and how to, pull them into your knowledge and share the skills that you have with them to educate them about questions that they're asking. So I'm sure the rest of you have business. Yeah, Rick?
Yeah, Shake, to add to your bibliography reading list, I'd say get a copy of Christina Halverson's Content Strategy for the Web, the second version. And there's some good friction between content strategy and content marketing. They are two different things. But they can work together. So I'll chat a link to it. But any other book recommendations, folks, to share with Shake?
Thank you.
Great. Okay, let me just chat this link here. And then I'll do a pitch for, if there's nothing further, I'll do a pitch for next week. Join us, where I will be talking about how to think about content performance metrics in 2022, which I'm rapidly iterating because of Agile and some of the information I got today from everybody. There's the link to Christina Halverson's Content Strategy book. I'd say what Joe Polizzi is to content marketing, Christina Halverson is to content strategy. You follow these two thought leaders, you learn a lot there. And I want to thank you again, Brian, for presenting all your time today. And thank you everybody for joining and engaging. Dennis will post a replay to this video, and then we'll get, oh, look, there are slides. Get my slides info.
I'm just uploaded them. I'll put the link on there in just a minute, and you can download them from there. So
perfect. Perfect. Well, I'll end the meeting now, but we can get that from you, Brian, subsequently.
Great.
And thank you, everyone. Until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.